Hello, folks.
Hi, fam.
Hi, Shashi. I think we have enough people. I see Paul, Maru, Ivan. Everybody is there. I think we can start. Do we want to follow the order in which the agenda items have been listed, or different order? Like probably we can keep the design review at the end of this meeting.
Yeah, I'm okay for this. I think we can first go through other items before we go through the design of the Federation promo. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So next item. Yeah, we had this discussion about um, the issue with install latest YAML, and some fixes were also suggested. But you want to give a small explanation of the item that you did put up?
Sure. So currently we have installed latest, which I was somehow confused. For some reason I thought that was going to be I want to install the latest committed state, and it actually means install some arbitrary like latest pushed release because it's tied to the image. And so really we have to update the image with the tag of latest at the same time we update install latest.yaml. I find that super confusing. I think ideally we would have like one path to install the latest committed state and probably a separate path per released or pushed version. And so those tags would be like 001 or 001 alpha 1, alpha 2, whatever it is. But for me, like, I'd like to just have some clarity around how you install a given version of something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so there seems to be some confusion around the state of what we have in the repo as of now and the way it is linked to the images. So first, one point which is not probably, or we can talk it as part of a separate issue. I think there already is an issue about it. That is, one confusion is because of the way tags are put on the image. So latest is actually the tag which is on the latest release version rather than the head of master. So if that alone changed, can I think change a good amount of confusion.
Agree.
Yeah, agree. That's a normal thing. Like latest always points to the latest commit. It is not a release ideally.
Yeah, and other remaining mechanism of installation, I think there already is some progress which is towards having a chart for this rather than using a YAML here. We can in fact maintain both, but I believe it might make sense to deprecate YAMLs in favor of a chart, which can as well be maintained in the V2 repo itself.
Yeah,
I have mixed feelings about that. Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I was just gonna say, like, I have kind of mixed feelings about Helm in general, but I think that a chart is probably a very sensible way to install Federation for now, especially as we get to the point where we want any of these things to like serve TLS for like a metrics endpoint or you name it. YAML is gonna, just a raw YAML is gonna fall short.
Hold on though, like TLS, isn't that something that, I don't know. I guess for me, I'm a little bit puzzled as to how Helm chart is going to make things easier to maintain, given that install YAML is currently generated. Are we going to have that same capability for a Helm chart so that when we add new types, we don't have to manually maintain anything?
No, I did not mean that we won't have to manually make changes. Probably a chart would be derived from a YAML. So that's what I meant by this, that we can, for now, maintain both the YAML and the charts as part of the V2 network, unless we have a better mechanism of
I,
having an
I'm
intermediate YAML and creating a chart. Paul, go ahead. You were saying something.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure there's a way that we could get the well, actually, let's back up a second here. This actually, like, this conversation touches another part, something else on the agenda that I wanted to talk about today. And one thing that comes to mind is that, like, in terms of the sorry, I've just confused myself. I think I in the formulation of, like, speaking the sentence I was going to speak, decided that it was not accurate. So never mind.
So I've taken a look at the proposed Helm chart for this, and I mean, kudos for doing a lot of work, but my sort of concern with the work that's being done is that it is essentially having to be manually created, as far as I can tell. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but the last thing I want to have to do is manually maintain a Helm chart and have to maintain every single type and CRD and every single thing we do and manually go and curate that. Like, if we don't have a generated solution for a Helm chart, I don't want to do a Helm chart. If we have a way we can take what KubeBuilder is doing and convert it into a Helm chart in an automated fashion, awesome. But the current solution is automated, and I want to keep it that way.
So I was going to say, if I remember correctly, you can pass KubeBuilder the location of the file to generate when you do the generation, and I personally,
That's
I think
fine. I'm just looking at the Helm chart, and it's basically cutting up the existing generated stuff and creating something that's effectively having to be manually curated. So I want to make sure that this is an accident of implementation and not a requirement.
Yeah, I think Maru, I think that's for more or less it's a convenience for readability. But instead of that, we can just maintain whatever one YAML is install YAML in the chart instead of breaking it up and then using that. Gongya, am I correct?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I would be wholly in favor of avoiding focusing on readability. Like, maybe that could be something we do eventually when we've stabilized and this is like the form we expect to maintain indefinitely, but I'm not convinced we're there yet.
Yeah, I do agree.
so.
Yeah,
With all that said, we do have the problem of there should be a way to install a particular version.
yeah. And also with all the Helm chart, we were not able to let the customer to upgrade or to downgrade. And the customer need to get different YAML templates and then to do the upgrade or to do the downgrade. But if we have the Helm chart, and then the customer can just get the related version and then do the downgrade or upgrade. It should be pretty simple with a Helm chart to do the upgrade case.
What would an upgrade consist of, though? I mean, if we have different versions of CRDs and things, how does Helm automatically handle that?
Yeah, currently the Helm chart is not able to handle this case automatically, which means that we may need to update the Helm chart manually based on the latest CRD resources.
I guess maybe these are two different things and I shouldn't be trying to conflate them. The one issue is we want to be able to have a canonical way of installing a given version. And then there's another sort of like another topic, which is how do we make sure that you can upgrade between versions? I'm not sure we should consider the upgrades until we have just the ability to install a given version. Does that make sense to people?
Yes, that makes sense. Let's focus on getting a way of installing the latest master and a versioned Federation V2. One thing about Helm, I think they're working on it, and someone might be able to inform us on the latest status. But the thing I don't like is that you have to actually install Tiller, and you have to get a deployment for Helm working before you can actually install Federation V2. So it adds yet another dependency, which again, depending on how we end up testing CI, would have to be incorporated, and we'd probably have to add instructions for doing that as well to the docs.
I mean, I'm not averse to doing that. I share your concern that it just adds a dependency and overhead friction around installation. My suggestion would be is that we solve the versioning for just the install YAML generated by KubeBuilder. And if work is going to continue on the Helm chart, that's fine, and we'll have kind of a parallel way to do it. But in my mind, at least right now, we'd be ideally having install YAML as one way to do it, and Helm would basically repackage that in a way that maybe is more preferable to some people. And that way, like, we kind of kill two birds with one stone. Does anybody have any concerns with that suggestion?
Maru, I did not get the last thing that you mentioned. I missed that out. Can you please repeat that?
Not actually sure what the last part is, but the idea being is, go ahead, sorry.
Kill two birds with one stone, and then I think we lost your audio.
Oh, that's all I said. I mean, basically, like, if we have install YAML for, installing head and also every version that we want people to care about, and then we have Helm charts that consume that install YAML and provide it in a way that some people might find preferable. But effectively, we would get the ability to have sort of a straightforward path without Helm, and Helm would kind of just inherit the work we do for the install YAML.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to derive at. So the choice of Helm for me is sort of a little important because it's a super popular tool for KTS app users. So that alone gives me a reason to probably have a Helm chart installation for Federation, but need not be necessarily right now. That's super important or necessary to be done as of now.
I mean, it's already in process, so I'm not suggesting that work block on that. I would like to avoid having to manually maintain the YAML for the Helm chart.
Yes. So I was coming to that. So let me try to explain a little. So what my suggestion would be, so right now we actually started off this discussion because of issue that we faced relating the mapping of the correct image to what we have in install latest, which was probably named wrong itself. Install latest was actually installing a given version or the last release version. So this naming mismatch is one solution for sure. We have to solve that. That's an immediate solution. We also have to have maybe a path forward, like how exactly are we going to map the release versions to the CI. CI always tests the latest, or CI tests the release version also, or verifies the release version also, and verifies the master also, something like that. And post that, we have some mechanism where we can probably have auto generation of a chart from the YAML that is generated by the kube builder. Maybe a script can do that. I mean, I'm not sure, or maybe some people are already coming up with a tool like that. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think I got a bit lost at the end. Can you maybe restate?
Yeah, so what I was saying is there are two different things we are talking here. So one is the solution to a little bit of problem that we have with the YAMLs and the mapping of the image to that. That is one different problem and should be solved, right? The other is uh, having a Helm chart installation also for Federation V2. And the issue that we see with it right now is that we might have to hand curate the charts for each update that we do in V2. So my suggestion would be, can we not have a script or some tool which can translate the YAML to a chart?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's my suggestion. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, actually we can have a script which can help to translate the YAML to Helm chart, but the script may not able to function well because there are some YAML templates need to be split, such as we may need to split the whole YAML template, such as the install.yaml to some different YAML templates, such as we need to split it to the CRD templates and also need to get the stateful set of the Federation V2. So I mean
I'm
that
confused as to why we can't just have a big collection of things that Helm is just installing. Is that not an option?
Yeah.
I mean, Helm consists of a tiller and it applies configuration, optionally templatized. But in our case, if we just have like a big collection of configuration, couldn't we just feed install YAML to the Helm chart and have it work? Like, I'm not saying we couldn't. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that works, but one of the benefit of Helm chart is probably about customization. Like user can give whatever image or like how much resources a container should use. All those like should be configurable ideally. So KubeBuilder, what it generates is it is not a templatized one.
So I want to point out, I think there are like a few different logical things that are in the installation.yaml, and those different things are going to change at different paces. So for example, there's the resources necessary to deploy like the Federation controller. And then there are the CRDs for the like core Federation resources like federated type config, federated cluster, propagated version. And then there are CRDs for federated types like the federated config map, etc. And then there are federated type configs, like the actual like federated type config resources that we need to create to configure Federation out of the box for the Kubernetes API. And those are all going to change at different paces. Like I'd expect probably that the thing that will change the least often is are the resources to run the Federation controller, and that the things that'll change probably more often are like the shape of CRDs or instances of those CRDs. So for example, like if we think things are going to change, like if there's a group of resources that we think is the group that's going to change all the time, that's probably the most important for like an automated generation path to keep up to date. And for things that aren't going to change all the time, those are probably not as important to maintain in a generated, like automatic fashion. And those are probably the ones that are going to have the customizations, right? Like so I can easily imagine us adding parameters to the chart that will allow you to select which feature gates are turned on. Just something I wanted to point out And then I also wanted to ask a question. Since the chart, as far as I know, contains both the CRD definitions and custom resources of the types that are defined, can we really fit this all into a single Helm chart? Because in order to create custom resources, for example, like in order to create a federated type config, the federated type config CRD has to already be installed. And so I guess one question is, how are you handling that in the chart currently? I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Yeah, currently the Helm 2.10 already have the feature, and with Helm 2.10, we can make sure that the CRD resources will be created first, and then the Helm will create other resources. It's a feature introduced by the latest Helm release.
Okay, so Helm has a facility to ensure, it sounds like, that when a chart contains CRD, that those CRDs are installed before anything else and are available before the rest of the chart proceeds, it sounds like?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's a good feature.
Also, you may see that I have updated all the CRD resources, and I have added a post hook in the annotation. And the post hook is named as CRD-install, and this can make sure that the CRD resources will be created first when we run the command helm install.
Is the post create thing a Helm notion?
Yeah, it's just no, it's just a CRD annotation.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess I would like to see like some sort of automatic consumption of install YAML, at least for the CRDs. Maybe, as Paul says, it's not as important for the things that are likely to be customized, like say the deployment or the deployment directory, that kind of thing. Like the power of Helm, I can see it being useful to being able to allow users to override that. And certainly the work I've been doing around namespace federation, where you're customizing those things, that would make it a lot easier than manually maintaining it. I just want to make sure we're not having to like manually copy CRDs around. If we could just have those and put it in the chart.
I think we want to avoid doing that if we can. I guess, so in terms of the automated regeneration, it seems like it's probably most important to regenerate like all the CRD definitions and any federated type configs, right? Do folks agree?
What do you mean by federated type configs?
I mean the actual federated type config resources that program federation for config maps, etc.
Those are currently manually curated, I think. I mean, unless we just say we're only going to start like to use Helm, I think it would make sense to have those in a place that can be consumed both manually and through Helm. Because I don't think those are really those aren't customized; they're more or less static.
Gotcha. So I guess what we could do is we could put the federated type configs into a single YAML file that is like symlinked into the chart.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
So then really the automated regeneration is around, like the need for that is most urgent for the custom resource definitions themselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paul, so you mean that we need to update KubeBuilder to generate the CRD and the stateful sets in different files?
I think if we could have KubeBuilder generate the CRD definitions in a single YAML file, which I believe that you can do. I think I actually added that feature to KubeBuilder, if I remember correctly. You should be able to get KubeBuilder to put all the custom resource definitions into a single file. And I believe that you can tell KubeBuilder where you want that file to live.
Isn't that
Okay.
what we're doing already? I mean,
Right.
Yeah, that
And
seems to be happening right now, right?
yeah,
I mean,
and I'm saying maybe this is as simple as we generate it, like generate the install YAML using KubeBuilder, and then generate the CRD YAML for the chart also using KubeBuilder. Just 2 steps, everything gets regenerated.
is that, I mean, does that imply that KubeBuilder has the ability to output just the CRDs?
It does have the ability to output just the CRDs, I believe.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure that was one of the features I added, but we should make sure that that feature still exists after the 1.0 refactor. If it doesn't, I think it's a no-brainer to add to KubeBuilder, but I have a feeling that it does. I'll take a look.
Version
Okay.
1.0 still has the -- CRDs option to the create config subcommand.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and also another question is that when I generate the CRD resources, is it possible to add some customized annotations to the resource, such as the CRD install annotation?
Sorry, what is the annotation for?
I have just post some content into the chat box. I mean that when I use KubeBuilder to generate the CRD resource, is it possible to add some customized annotations to those resources?
Yeah, I dropped a link in the chat to what Wanya is referring to.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I think that a simple way to do it would be we could have a sed script that does it. That's just run as part of a regeneration script.
I think one of the ways KubeBuilder might be recommending to make alterations to their generation is by using customize and having like a template version of what fields you want to customize that it can apply after the fact. I know that KubeBuilder is starting to use customize for certain parameters, so we may want to look at that. And I know Maru and I also discussed potentially using customize as a way of providing different parameters and not having to use these sort of set alterations sprinkled around.
Yeah, I'm personally like fine with sed as like a tactical approach. I think based on what I expect KubeBuilder to generate, that you could write a very, very small sed script that is just a one-liner that you could reprocess the file and add the annotations in.
All this sounds fine to me. I mean, at this point, I guess Helm is the de facto. At some point, do we imagine cutting over to customize, given that, I mean, the main advantage of Helm in my mind is that it allows customization. Like it facilitates it via the templatizing, whatever. But I mean, to me, are there other values to Helm other than that? Because customize can provide the same parameterization.
Yeah, one thing that I have found to be extremely convenient about Helm in the past, and I'm not sure if Customize allows this or has a similar feature, is that Helm has a way for you in a chart to generate a certificate so that you can serve TLS from something that you install in a chart, which is very helpful since there is no official way to have a serving certificate generated for you in Cube yet.
Is that going to change? It seems like a pretty obvious feature to have.
Yeah, so in OpenShift, we have a feature called service serving certificates that you can annotate a Kubernetes service with something that basically says, I want to have a service serving certificate created for this thing and put into this secret in this namespace. And then you can consume it in a pod in that namespace. And there is an operator for service signing certificates that at one point we were very interested in pushing this functionality upstream for the service signing certificates. I don't think it's going to go upstream, at least not anytime soon. And there's actually like a proliferation of things in the Cube ecosystem to basically do the same thing. So it doesn't seem likely to be part of Cube anytime in the near future.
Okay, I guess I'm resistant to the idea that I'm going to need to use Helm to install Federation as a developer, but it doesn't sound like I'm going to have good options like alternatives. So I guess I need to just resign myself. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm fine with end users using it, you know, if that's what they prefer, whatever, but it just seems like it's adding a lot of complexity for not really a lot of value for a developer.
So in terms of next steps, it seems like we should determine whether we can have one like regeneration script that keeps everything in sync.
Yeah, Paul. So before we have the script, I think that maybe we should first have the Helm chart there, and then we can create a script to keep the YAML templates and the Helm chart to be synced.
Yeah, I personally don't want to block anything, and I don't want the chart to get stale. If we were to merge the chart, would you be willing to, as an immediate follow-up, look at the regeneration?
Sorry, so what do you mean regeneration? Do you mean I also need to create the script to generate the Helm chart?
I'm saying that I don't want to block the work on the chart. And I personally would be fine to like merge the chart and do the handle ensuring that there is a way to regenerate, install YAML and the CRD definitions that the chart uses so that they stay in sync as like an immediate follow-up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, let me ask a question. Is it immediately necessary to have a chart for installing the head from master, or it might be sufficient to have a chart per release?
I think it's probably more important for releases.
Yeah, then would we or do we need the add-on work that we are proposing over here? We can as well, like looking at the current frequency of releases, let's say it's 2 to 3 months. If we map a chart to a release, which I think is, I mean, even if it has to be hand curated, is not a lot of work. Does it make sense?
I mean, do we want to keep having the releases that far apart? Seems like
that's what my question is. Like, if we see that the releases are much higher frequency or going to happen at much higher frequency, then we can revisit having all this mapping and an auto generation of a chart and all this stuff.
I would say there's probably not an immediate need, but I also don't think this is actually a huge amount of work to do.
I mean, I'm worried about this getting confusing. We're already having problems with install YAML, and adding it another pathway just seems like it's not going to make it easier. I just want some clarity on, like, I mean, to me, the baseline for this isn't do we have a Helm chart? It's what's our strategy for allowing people to install stuff? As I like the agenda item we led with, having a way to install master, having a way to install releases.
Why I was saying this is because I heard somewhere that using a chart might make life a little more complicated for developers, and like having one more dependency for that. So and chart makes a lot of sense for users, like rather than having to uh, install the way it is installed right now. If there is an official chart for say a particular release of Federation, it's a well-consumed thing for users. So is it okay if we keep these two separate, or we should merge these?
I think in the immediate step, maybe both methods we can support. Once we make the transition to Helm, I think we can let the install that method go. I think that should be the way. I think it is not necessarily harder to work with a Helm chart in the development. I think it's very easy. You can. It is a local chart anyway. It is some kind of tool. It is better than a shell script.
Okay, then let's go ahead with next proposed step by Paul, which is a regeneration script which can keep everything in sync once this chart is merged.
I mean, to me, the challenge is that there's two sort of use cases. One is CI and developers, and one is users. And Helm chart maintained and released periodically is totally fine for users. But I mean, the value of install YAML today is that's what we use to test in CI. We actually generate YAML based on the state of the tree. We use that to deploy Federation to a Minikube cluster, and then we run E2E tests on it. So
I'm
still need to
also
be able to do that.
yeah, I'm also sort of thinking on similar lines. Like I seem to have similar thought as you, Maru. That's why I was suggesting that. Like keep two different. It's for me. It's okay to have keeping two different things for users and developers.
So I guess the suggestion is then like we can continue using KubeBuilder until we're happy with Helm, and then maybe we could even like for the configuration and install YAML. Eventually, we could probably just cut over to Helm. In the near term, we'll just keep generating, and probably what we're going to be replacing is install latest. So install latest can maybe go away, and we're no longer committing install YAML to the tree in favor of a Helm chart once that's merged. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's move ahead. We already consumed 40 minutes in this discussion. So what I'm hearing, the next item on the agenda is status update about the Helm chart.
I think we talked through that one.
Yeah, so I think this will proceed. Like this PR probably would be merged then.
Yeah, but I still have one question. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, so currently, because I was working for the charts, the version is 0.2. So I'm just wondering, do we still need to support the already released 0.1 version?
I think it should be fine. I think if we go ahead with 0.02, I think. What others feel?
Same.
Yeah, because I got a comment from Shashi, so
yeah, that was more or less like a query for everybody. I think it should be fine, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as a user also. I would really not bother using an older version, given that we already haven't released something which is supportable.
Yeah, I don't see the point in supporting older versions.
Okay. Great.
I'm still not entirely clear though on how we're going to be like if I want to install 0.02, there's going to be a Helm chart that we're going to release or publish or something that's going to presumably allow for that, or is it simply going to be a matter of when you're using the Helm chart, you're supplying a version, and that version will pick up the appropriate image? Like, what's the strategy for relating the chart to the versioned image?
So the we we should release the chart to a chart repository. And we can, like, the chart can have a parameter for what image you want to use that defaults to the Federation V2 image of the same version as the chart. So like the image can be parameterized defaulting to in chart, for example, O.O.2 to Federation V2 tag O.O.2.
I think I'm still fuzzy on this, and maybe this is just a sign I should stop wasting everyone's time and we can do it offline. But there's still not clarity in my mind of how the chart in our repo is going to be related to, because the chart in the repo is going to be basically, it's going to be updated periodically. It's going to represent a future release date. Like, is my confusion making sense to people?
Yeah, and I think what's missing is like in order to capture the specific version, like in order to capture the chart at a particular version, we can release to a chart repository that will hold the history of like the logical versions of the chart.
And okay, so that provides for the release version. The thing that's still not entirely clear is the state of the chart at any given revision in master. In my mind, it should always represent the state of that revision. Like if I add a new type, like kind of like we do boilerplate or generated code checks, it kind of seems to me that we should have a way of automating the Helm chart update such that we can detect when it hasn't been done and fail CI so that someone goes and does it.
Right, and that's what we talked about as like a next step after the initial commit of the Helm chart. Okay. Unless I missed something.
Like, well, we talked about generation, but I'm just sort of extending that to, I want to automatically verify when generation wasn't performed, because I want to head off the problem we're having with install YAML, where there's no telling at any given point, like whether it's in sync with the rest of the tree. I'd like to make sure that
if we can write a generator script, like that's one step away from like a verification script that we could use in a PR check in CI.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to raise the topic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, so this next item also is points to this. I did put it as, I think in last meeting we did discuss about, is it time for us to cut a 0.0.2 release? Like we have done a lot of updates, some probably new features also, and maybe mark features for this release. It's something pending.
Yeah, I would say being able to deploy Federation on a namespace level is definitely something I'd like to see in our O.O.2.
And I would definitely think Alvin chart would also make a good feature to install Federation for 0.0.2.
So do we want to create a 0.0.2 milestone and tag things to it, and then we can update next week and see where we are?
Sure, we can do that. And how I logically see with respect to chart is like first, I guess we probably need to have a particular commit which is tagged as 0.0.2, and then a chart could be created for it because the image should exist for that chart to consume. Right? Like we already decided that we will create a chart for release for now, at least for this release.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. I was too busy dancing because I saw that Shashi's external DNS PR was merged.
Okay. Yeah. What I was saying is that, Maru mentioned that we can create a milestone and then we can tag items to this. But the chart for this particular release would not be part of this milestone, or would it be? Like the chart has to be created once the release is cut out. right?
Yeah.
And the image is pushed.
Well, we have to update, we have to put the chart into the tree and make it current and maintain it manually. And then at the time we cut a release, we're essentially transferring that chart, referencing a published image into some chart repo. So I think creating the chart is part of the milestone. Publishing the chart is kind of like post milestone.
Sure.
Yeah. I also have a question to Paul. Because currently I found that the service catalog also have Helm charts, but I don't know where do we release the catalog charts, because I don't find the chart in the Kubernetes Helm repo.
Ah, yes. Now, I did some follow up on that, and at one point we released to a chart repository. What happens now is that we release to like a Google storage bucket. So for each version of the chart, we like make a new directory in this Google storage bucket and put the chart there. But that does not mean that I necessarily think we want to do that for Federation. And I'm very interested in seeing if we can get Federation V2 chart releasable into the main chart repository.
Okay. Sure. I see.
So maybe you and I can both try to track that down, what steps we need to do that.
Yeah. Also, because the catalog already has some releases, so perhaps we can do, I'm not sure if we can post some PRs to the Helm chart repo to first push the service catalog there, so that the Federation can also follow the same style to push the chart into Helm repo.
My advice is not to block on anything related to service catalog.
Yep. I think that this will not block the service catalog. Perhaps you only need to create a PR into Kubernetes Helm chart repo, and then people will merge the charts.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think let's just say that that you and I jointly have the action item to investigate publication of the chart into the main Helm chart repo.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Next item, actually the last item was the full design review.
Before that, actually, I'll just take a minute.
Sure.
Actually, last week we discussed the federated status. So I had done a PR. So if you had not taken a look at it already, so please have a look. Okay. So maybe further whatever issues we can deal in the PR, right?
Sure. Yeah, I don't see remaining 10 minutes or 9 minutes is sufficient for the design review. Guangya, do you have a particular or specific point that you might want to share or get comments on?
Yeah, so
I
I
think we
already
can do
got
that
some
now.
comments from Maru for the design. So here I just want to focus on some questions. So yeah, so the first question is that I think that we agree that we should create a new controller to do the generation configuration. And now I have a question. So the question is, do we need to do this product in a separate repo, or we can also do it in the current repo of Federation V2?
It might be easier to start in a separate repo and or just start in a fork in a branch. And you know, once there's something to demo, we can look at whether we think it should go into Federation V2 repo.
Oh, okay, great.
So one thing that that I have been wondering about in connection with not necessarily pull reconciliation, but just the idea that that we'd want to have another propagation mechanism in the future, like any propagation mechanism, right? When I look at our API, it seems like it might be a good idea to split the current federation.kates.io API group into different layers, where one has federated type config, federated cluster, and propagated version. And those are really seem to be a function of the current like sync controller and push reconciliation. And then the actual like API types for the Kubernetes Federation API should maybe go in a different group. And then when someone wants to add a new like reconciler or propagation mechanism, the control surface for that mechanism will likely be different than, at least in some respects, than what we have for the sync controller. So those could go into their own distinct API group at the point when someone wanted to add them. I wonder what people think about this. And I have planned to write an issue up about it. I didn't get to it before this meeting, but I can definitely write this up as an issue so that we can have the discussion on GitHub.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Okay, so I also have another question because I found that Maru has some comments about the sync controller. And currently, the reason that I want to leverage the sync controller is because it already has some logic to generate the placement policies, such as yeah. So I mean that's from here you can see that the sync controller already knows which cluster should have the resources and which cluster should not have the resources, and we also have the YAML templates that we want to create in the member clusters. So here, I just want to leverage the sync controller to generate the placement policy and also to generate the YAML templates that we want to create in the member cluster or that we want to push into GitHub repo. So here, I just want to leverage the sync controller because we already have some logic here. Yeah, this is the
Sync
main
controller
reason.
does so much more. It has to consider the state of the underlying clusters, for example, as I commented in the document. And it has to have a bunch of informers related to that. And so like using the sync controller would just be like muddying up what is a very simple configuration exercise. You look at the template, the overrides the placement, you generate YAML into the appropriate directory in a path in the file system corresponding to that cluster. That is a very disjoint. Like the only thing in common is how you compose the resource, but that really is a trivial part of the sync controller. Like you can lift that out and either make it reusable or just copy it directly with far less effort than you would if you tried to take the sync controller and repurpose it.
Yeah, Guang, yeah, I'm also hearing the same. I think there is some amount of useful code that you probably want to leverage. So refactoring in such a way that sync controller remains the way it is, and your controller can also use the same code might make sense.
Yeah. Okay, sure. I will check this part. Yeah. Okay, so and also for the repo, and I think that we have the agreement that we can just fork the current Federation V2 repo, or we can just create another repo and do the prototype there. And after the prototype was finished, and then we will do a playback, and then we can decide if we want to have the source code in Federation V2 repo, or we should have a separate repo. Yeah, make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I also got comment from Maru, and Maru has a comment, why do I want to create some interface? And the reason that I want to have interface is because I want to make sure that the pool mode can be extendable, because currently we only have the player, but in the future we may also have some other adapters. So here I just want to create a more flexible framework so that we can add some other adapters if needed in the future.
I mean, you're free to do whatever you want, but the reality is you don't have a use case for extensibility, so why add the overhead of extensibility? When you need it, it's not going to be that hard to create an interface and create an abstraction. But
Yeah.
This is a classic case of you ain't going to need it, Yagni.
I see. Yeah. But currently, I think that it should be also okay if I create a interface and then create one plugin. Yeah.
No, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You're going to do it out of the tree. I'm telling you that, like, abstraction has a cost, and I don't see the point of paying it unless you actually have a definitive use case for it. Which you don't.
I think it's easy. I think it's easy to get into a situation where you generalize prematurely. So I would also I would also treat like this exercise right now as forget about any other like pull reconciliation implementation, and let's I'd suggest to focus just on kubeapplier, and at the point where there is some other method that someone wants to look at, that would be a better time to consider what the interface for an extension would look like.
Yeah, okay, sure. And the last question is that I also got comment from Maru, and I think that we are on the same page, and because currently I wanted to use the configuration generation controller to generate the resource YAML templates, and also want to generate a placement policy. And currently the placement policy is just the cluster name where I wanted to post, where I want to create the resource. So here I just post a link here, sorry.
But okay, let's be clear though, like the way that kubeapplier works is for a given cluster, you give it a directory, and it applies all configuration in that directory. So in order to provide kubeapplier compatible configuration, there's no conception of cluster names. All you would do is you would use the placement policy to decide in which directory corresponding to the cluster that you were to generate the configuration into.
Yeah, right.
Makes sense? Like otherwise you're gonna have to take the policy in the YAML and you're gonna have to process it again to get kubeapplier compatible configuration. I'm saying just generate it in one step for now until you know you need something else.
Yeah, and I will only get the decision from the placement policy, from the placement. Yeah, so from here you can see that the placement will only include which cluster that I want to create the resources. So in here I just want to create the namespace in both cluster 1 and 2. So I will post the YAML templates in 2 directories, and then the member cluster can pull the templates from GitHub and then create it in the member cluster. Yeah.
So you're gonna. I'm still not clear whether. So you're clear that you don't like. It doesn't make sense to kubeapplier to generate the placement policy. Only the final.
No. I think that we will not use kubeapplier to generate the placement policy. The placement policy will be generated by the placement policy in Federation. And
when you say generated, do you mean defined by the user, or do you mean there's going to be a controller that actually generates an intermediate form?
Yeah, the controller will have to generate the decisions.
I'm still not. I really don't.
So we're at time. We're at time for now.
Yeah.
Maybe we can continue this offline, but like we're at time, and I feel like this is the beginning of a new discussion. So we should probably end the meeting here.
Okay.
Yeah, Guanga, you go ahead with like some portions of this design seem to be converging to some possible implementation. So you can start that, and perhaps in the next meeting we can have more discussion on the pointers which are.
Okay, sure. I think that we have make some conclusion that we will start some work to create a separate repo and do some prototype there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that fork could be your own fork, or you, if you have an org where you want to place that, you can do that there also.
Yeah, I also want to get some comments from you guys. So where shall I fork the repo, or do we have some official repo that I can host the code there?
Honestly, man, I would probably just do this in my own fork in a branch.
Oh, okay. I see.
And that way you can avoid a lot of overhead, you know, with setting up a new repo for now.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
All right. See ya.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.